Okay. Okay, call the solid waste meeting to order for August. Is the meeting properly announced?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call, let the record show that Bruce Mons is absent. Everybody else is here. Need a motion to approve the agenda. So motion, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Need a motion to approve minutes from July 12th. Motion and second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, other participation if there is any. Has everybody had a chance to look at the financial reports? And are there any questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Kyle, you got a question?
Under the expense report, purchase of services for $28,121.85. The first top paragraph for July. Was that for the clean sweep?
That number is not one, right? I don't know why it's under the expense report. But yeah,
Which was way over on budget on that particular line item.
well, this.
Hear that, Kyle?
Yeah, that was for, that looks like that was for clean sweep. I think Charlie was in the middle of answering that, it sounded like.
It's a grant, so we get some of that back. So that's the invoice. Right.
I just caught that it was
Yeah.
a $10,000 budget for that.
Yeah. So we won't get all of that. I mean, we had more people than we ever imagined we would. So the grant isn't going to cover all of it, it'll cover a decent portion of it, probably like $16,000.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, how does the town of Adams overpay by $33,000?
Overpay.
On that was on the check. summary.
Yeah, so that's the way their contract is written. So at the beginning of the term, of the year basically, so in July, they pay for an estimated amount of garbage that they are gonna produce, that the town's gonna produce, they pay that up front. At the end of the year, we actually then, we settle it, so they pay way over.
Okay, so that wasn't for 1 month, that was for the year.
That was for the year. So we issue them, the way the contract is written, they pay this estimated amount. If they were more, they would owe us that difference. Then. If they were under, we owe them that difference. So at the end of the year, they're only paying for what garbage got collected.
Is that just for collection or for the tonnage or trucking?
That's just for tonnage. That's just for the tonnage. So the way their contract works is that there's a fixed fee, which is that's all the trucking, manpower, hours, gas. That's all fixed. They pay that same amount every year. It's the tonnage fee is the adjustable.
And will that tonnage fee change depending if it's priced as things change? Or is that
That's
locked
what-
in, or is that locked in as that pricing?
This contract got written before I started.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that got overlooked, that it doesn't clearly state either way what's supposed to happen. So actually, the county lawyer and their lawyer are working together to kind of amend that, and come up with like a hard line answer to it. Because the way the contract is written, it could be interpreted either way. They expected it to be locked in. The way I interpret the contract is like, pay what our tipping fee is. It's like, now this year, our tipping fee is higher than it was last year. But they didn't think that's what, they were under the impression that it was locked in.
Really should be done year to year.
And that's just, and it was never written in the contract that way, so.
We're
trying to come to at least like a, where maybe it's not every year, maybe it's 3 years or something. So maybe you stay the same for 3 years, then you get bumped up, so you're at that rate for 3 years. So their point of view was that's the reason they signed a 10-year contract. They were under the expectation that this would be locked in for 10 years, which is, that's a lot. That's a lot. So that's still being worked out. So the fixed fee is set. That'll be adjusted by 3% every year. Tipping fee was very vague language in the contract. So
As long as we're talking about contracts, bring up the contract with the city now.
yeah, you have questions, it's in my site report if you want to wait.
Okay.
I don't think, I mean, unless there's other questions on the financial report. Sorry.
Any other next questions? If not, we'll move on to the site report.
4,600 tons of garbage collected in July. 27,498 tons year to date, 3,500 tons more than the same last year. 438 tons of recycling collected in July. Year to date volume is 2,024 tons, which is 409 tons more. Safety, loss control, nothing to report on the industrial park. Still don't have an update on New Gen strategies. We'll be reaching out to them this week to kind of at least see. Since we last talked, Cynthia or Kyle, have you guys heard anything from New Gen?
I have not.
Kyle, don't we have a meeting set up this week?
No, it's a different meeting regarding solid waste.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing there. The next thing we're kind of looking at is, so Ayers Associates has been our engineering firm for our site for a lot of years. The two people that have been primarily at our site, Ben Piotr, and Mike Leopold, I don't know if those names ring a bell. Ben Piotr has been around a long time working at the site. They both left Ayers Associates. They both went to a firm called Tetra Tech. So currently, Ayers Associates doesn't have anyone on their staff with solid waste experience. So very early, we're just kind of looking into possibly changing over our engineering firm to Tetra Tech. Basically follow Ben and Michael there. Tetra Tech is a really good environmental firm. Solid waste is kind of what they do, or at least it's a huge part of what they do.
Where are they?
Madison. Yep. So they're a really good firm. I've worked with them at other sites, other jobs I've had. They're pretty big. So a little concerned. We're in the middle of this horizontal expansion, or vertical expansion. We're pretty tight. We're already working on a pretty tight timeline. So both situations, we either stay with Ayers, have engineers that don't necessarily have solid waste experience, and that delays us, or we switch to Tetra Tech, and the whole process of switching over delays us. So
Do you own the data from Ayers
Oh,
that you can just have it transferred to?
yeah, I mean, we're under contract with them through this year. But that's one of the things we're looking at. If there's a way out, if we want to do this year, or if we just want to wait till the end of the contract. I mean, like time-wise, it might end up being just that anyway. I don't really know how these things work. But in terms of owning our own data, yeah, we would get everything from them. It's gonna be a really tight turnaround when that cell out there is filling very quickly. We're against it when we need to put garbage we need to get this vertical finish improved, so we can put garbage up there. Yeah, it's going fast. So that's just one of the things we're dealing with. Camera installation started. It was salesman, very much. I mean, it's not gonna affect our price because we signed it for the price that we're gonna get it for, but it's gonna cost this company a lot more money than he thought. He very much underestimated the size of the project out in the berth, not necessarily here, but out in the berth. So they have to bring in some electricians to do run some conduit, run some wiring, different things, and he didn't plan for any of that. So I think he's feeling it a little bit for his company, but the only thing it's gonna do for us is push back. So we're looking at like mid to end of September for when this will be like now. Some of the cameras like in this building are in, there's just no wiring.
I was surprised that some of that isn't wireless.
Uh,
I'm surprised some of that isn't wireless.
Some of the outside ones are, you know, but since they have access to really everything here, it's all hardware. So yeah, that was for cameras. I'll be out of the office next week. Through Thursday, I'm going to a conference, a recycling conference in Austin. Where I'll be being part of a panel down there for the conference to talk about challenges and different things of running a recycling operation in rural, kind of small market areas. So I'll be there for through Thursday. Let's see, and then we conducted our first round of interviews for a driver spot that we have open in our department. We interviewed 4 applicants. We offered the job to one of them. We ultimately turned down the position, so it's now reposted and it closes next Wednesday. So, know anybody? Yeah, their CDL. Be interested in the job.
Yes, I do have some.
Looking to get back
No, I'm not
into it?
interested.
All right, site equipment, we're still waiting on DNR, their approval, they just keep telling me it's coming. Use the new ABC sprayer. Filling operation, I kind of gave an update on that, it's filling really quick, but everything's going as normal. Murph, little lower month in bales being sent out, 16 total outbound bales, recycling material was shipped out this last month. That is because prices have completely fallen off the cliff. Some of our, just kind of throw some numbers out. Their cardboard, it's dropped $20 a ton, like 3 weeks. Mixed paper, it's dropped $30 a ton. Then the PETs, some of the plastic materials have dropped from 56 cents a pound to 10 cents a pound. And 8 cents a pound is about our, maybe a little more, 6 is about Jason Center. Plus 6 cents a pound is what it costs us. Okay. Yeah. So that's been unfortunate. That's always kind of a risk. It's a commodity, goes as the market goes. So yeah, it's just another thing we're kind of dealing with. Staffing's actually been okay, been at 8 to 10 employees, so that's been all right this last month. Yeah, we're getting a few employees from the other contract. And then City of Adams, we were awarded the City of Adams contract that's going to start the first week of October. Getting all the detail stuff out. I wrote up, or not, write up, I used the contract template that we use with other municipalities, filled in the numbers with them. And I will be sending that back to the city. There this week, so probably tomorrow. Carts were ordered and all the literatures, we're kind of working on the literature that's going to work out. So, question on that?
Any questions?
Yes. On the contract with the city.
Yeah.
I mean, we did not go through that at the committee level. Are we sure that we put enough money in it? Because the reason I ask, I mean, we've got new gen in the study. We haven't got any results yet. Aren't we gonna have negative our figures if new gen comes back and says that we're losing money on transportation? Is that what we're losing?
We put a lot of effort into this contract. We couldn't wait for new gen or we would have got it. So we had to, so we increased, yeah, we have plenty of money in for the carts, we have money in for the trucks, we have increased our fuel amount a fairly significant amount compared to what we've done other.
And did LSR bid on it?
Yeah.
Were we able to underbid them?
So LRS actually came in and did they kind of did a tiered,
Make sure we say.
yeah, Lakeshore now, it's like our S system, it's Lakeshore Recycling System.
Whichever, we know what you're talking about.
So they actually came in at like a tiered system where it was, so theirs was lower than ours actually, the first year, but higher by year 5. So they increased theirs. So we are even, they were like this. So essentially through the whole course of the 5 years, we were basically even. And they wanted to go with us because they like local part of it, this will run. And yeah, that's it, but essentially we were,
Are we open-ended on the tipping fees like we just talked about?
they just wanted to fix, so they're not having to split out. So we gave them, they have 2 different kind of proposals, one where they pay a fixed fee and then they pay for the tipping fee separate, or one where the tipping fee is just built right in. And that number is plenty high as well. Like, so the estimated tipping fee that they're getting paid is plenty high for what they're going to be putting on the garbage. That's, they said they'd rather have the consistency of this same invoice every single week. So with LRS, with new gen, there's a chance, I guess, that they could come back and tell us that, but based on what the city told us, that we were already even with LRS, if we were going even higher, I would have got it. So we kind of had to keep our numbers where they're at. And yeah, there's a chance, but like I said, we couldn't wait for a new gen. So we had to put the best number we could based on the information we had. And submit it. Otherwise, we just wouldn't have gotten
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so I can kind of elaborate a little bit on some of that. So the way that we put everything together, we have like an equipment rate for like the trucks. We have the equipment rate set in all of our bids that we do. We're not actually going to need additional trucks for this, but we have that rate in there. So we do have that little bit built in there, so that way we can fund our capital as well. Yeah, and the carts we did, like Charlie said, we did up that a little bit with this quote as well. Yeah, so and then there's also the admin fee on there as well that we calculate out. We don't submit that level of detail though with the bids, but we have a detail worksheet that we use to come up with what our rate is going to be.
Okay, anything else? Okay, moving on. 2022 project status report, Kyle.
That's me.
That's you.
Nothing, I guess we had one update, we got the conveyor done, in the MRF, so the trash conveyor that we needed for last year. So now there's a conveyor at the end of the MRF line that takes all the excess trash. And it actually, so our original plan was to dump it into like a large, like 30-yard container. We actually had a baler repaired. And so now it all dumps into a baler with a self tire on it. So it just automatically bales the material, so we don't actually have to do anything. So it just sits there, and then just at the end of the day, they just clear the bales out of the way. And then those bales get stacked up in a 30-yard still, and then eventually brought out to landfill, disposed of. But the reason we did it this way in the bales is because there's a company that we've been working with. We've sent it loads before. Maybe I've gone over this already, but they buy residual material that comes out the end of a MRF, and then they put it through a secondary sort, and they pull some of the plastics, some of the stuff that we don't recycle that they do. So they buy them from us, they resort them, and then they do whatever they do. And there's a plant that does that is opening up this fall right in Chicago. So we have reasonable distance that we ship down. So we wanted to kind of get ahead. And if this works out, we're kind of ready to go right away.
So are you gonna be responsible for the owner or?
No, so they'll,
We'll come together?
yeah, they would be coming to get it. And just like with most of these, commodity materials, you have to have a full truck. So I think every couple of weeks, every month, or whatever. Yeah, and it's not gonna be a lot. You might only end up with 3 cents a pound, but it's all stuff that otherwise would just go into plant. So yeah, that's everything else. I think the only thing we're really waiting on is this cost of study, and then the camera system. So those things are still ongoing, but everything else on our like large order capital projects is
Okay. Questions? Next thing is for everybody to take a look at the budget. We're not gonna make any changes to it. This is just to let you know what it looks like. Any questions? Dr. Kyle.
Sorry. I really have a problem with my laptop. That's why I was late. Sorry about that. Where do I find it? I don't have any questions. I'm not gonna get changes. I just, again, I'm just having a real issue. This thing, I'm not even able to session. Yeah, I'm saying. Go ahead. You don't have to
Okay,
hold it.
we'll move on then. Discuss or act on investing of long-term care enclosure funds.
so for a landfill, we have to have funds to basically maintain the landfill for 40 years after its life. It's called long-term care. And that is for used for mowing or fences or any, take care of the landfill. You have to have the funds available because there's no more tipping fees coming in. So it either requires you to have this money available. We are looking at investing it, I guess, yeah. Kyle, this is probably where you can explain that.
Yeah, I'll take over. So the reason this ended up on a solid waste agenda is because we had discussed it initially at admin and finance. So yeah, like Charlie said, we have the long-term care funds and then we also have the closure funds. You'll see that actually reflected on the balance sheet. Can somebody see this up here? So you'll see that we have about $1.65 million in closure monies set aside. It's actually probably going to go up because we get some interest that's going to be coming in there. And then there's also about $1.86 million in long-term care. So we have the money, we have it set aside. It's required by the DNR to be set aside. So every month you'll see that on the balance sheet. So we have the closure and the long-term care funds right there, but then also on the other side of that is we have to record our estimated liability for long-term care and closure. So you'll see that down here as well. So some questions that came up at admin and finance, and that was they wanted to defer it over to solid waste, but there were some questions. One of the questions was, because this is required by the DNR, can the DNR take the money from us? Short answer, yes, they could potentially take the money from us. But this is, I'm just gonna read a little part of an email I got from our representative at the DNR that helps us with estimating how much cash we need in these funds. So he basically said the DNR would first pursue all other options to help the owner/operator perform the work before they then took custody of the funds. So there would have to be an extreme situation in order for the DNR to actually take over those funds. So what we're looking at is potentially investing these funds over with PMA. I did talk with our representative from the DNR. He said it looks like we should be able to, because their requirements are that it has to be a financial institution located within the state of Wisconsin. So PMA is located, they have an office in Wisconsin, it's in Milwaukee. So that shouldn't be an issue if we are able to proceed with that. The other thing with these long-term care and closure funds, the way that they estimate how much we need to have in there as of today, they base it off of the time value of money and then the implied interest rate. And the implied interest rate is like 2% that they use in their calculations. But for the last year or so, we've been getting less than 1% on those long-term care and closure funds. So they were initially held in CDs. The CDs were up for renewal. We didn't renew those CDs because the rates were insanely low. So they're sitting in a money market, which is, the interest rate is variable. It goes up, goes down. They kind of just follow the local government investment pool interest rate. So they'll kind of follow that. I think in June it was 0.88%. In July it was like just over 1%. But if we were to be able to invest those funds with PMA, they would actually go out for bid to see what other financial institutions could offer us for rates for investments. It's mainly CDs is what they would look at with other financial institutions, but then they would also look at US Treasury bills to see what those rates would be as well. I do have, I'm going to stop sharing really quick while I find this. I do have a model that they had put together for us. When last month we transferred $5 million over to PMA for investment. That's just general county funds. Let me see here. All right. So some of the rates that they were getting, and this was as of July 27th, they were getting, let me share my screen again here. So they were coming back, they were getting 3.3%. That's our net rate. So that's after they collect their fee. I think their fee is about 0.15%. So that's 3.3% is the net rate. So we would actually then be able to potentially exceed the implied interest rate that the DNR calculates for us, and then it may be less of a burden on the county, because we're getting to the point where we may need to start adding funds over into long-term care and closure. We haven't actually transferred cash over yet, but we're getting to a point where we potentially will need to. That gap in how much we have funded versus how much we're required is shrinking every year. So this was kind of kicked over to solid waste by admin and finance just to discuss it with the solid waste committee and see what your thoughts were.
Yeah, we discussed that at our last, we spent a lot of time at the county board meeting. This is the same program, isn't it?
This is money that's sitting in canvas.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
So you need a motion? Sure.
Not sure what I need. What do I need? Your show.
It says to act on it, so
It's,
I mean, we approve going forward with this EMA. Second.
okay, motion made and seconded to go forward with PMA. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, transfer the money.
Can you do it tonight?
I think we're going to end up having to go back to admin and finance because they told us $5 million was the limit for the next 6 months. So we're going to probably end up discussing it further with admin and finance. Again, we're going to let them know what was discussed and explained at the solid waste committee as well, and relay the answers to the questions that were asked at admin and finance. So it may be a little bit before we actually transfer it over to PMA. Is it? Cynthia, do I have that right? No? Go ahead,
Okay.
sorry.
If I remember right, I believe that they gave us a limit on our operations being at 5 million, but they left solid waste investments to solid waste. So if solid waste now votes to invest that money, I don't think we go any further, but perhaps what I'll say is we'll double check to make sure that that was the instruction, being that our meetings are recorded now. And I believe that that was the instruction, was that solid waste would have control on whether this moves forward as an investment. They limited us on the operations side to 5 million as a test period. And already, as you can see, the numbers, I mean, it's already proven itself. So, but that was my understanding.
Okay. We'll have to go. Yeah, we'll go back and review it. Sorry.
But whatever
Okay.
the process is,
Mhm.
it sounds like this committee is telling us to move forward with that consideration.
Okay, anything else on this? Now, if anybody has anything for next month's agenda, let Charlie or me know. Next meeting date, be September 13th, 5 PM here. Nothing else? Meeting's adjourned. Okay. Stop there.
Sorry, I caught up in that signal guy for about 10 minutes.
Signal that?